That's a question we'll answer right here, right now. Are the Reds, Cincinnati Reds, fixable? Um, I've said this in a previous episode. Again, welcome to Over the Wall Pod. Me and Thomas Scully break down the 2023 baseball season. We've done Oakland, we've done Washington, we're on to Cincinnati. Oakland fixable only if they sell the team. Washington fixable? Yes, they're in the right direction. Cincinnati, common theme to the first one: sell the team. You don't like baseball. Um, you guys get credit for like being what the first ever baseball team or whatever, but that's all you have to stand on. Um, this team frustrates me beyond measure. Again, I'm regionally based. I'm in Missouri. Okay, I'm a Red Sox fan, but I'm in Missouri. The Central Division of the NL has been something that I've followed my entire life. I've lived in St. Louis. When Cincinnati's good, I enjoy baseball. I love their ballpark. I think it's one of those great ballparks. It's like nothing special, but it just screams baseball to me.
Would you call it a great American ballpark?
Oh, that's terrible. We'll hopefully never use that again. But Cincinnati has had some great players over the years. Absolutely great players. Again, wasn't alive for the Big Red Machine. Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame. Um, all these things, but they are in like a total downspin. I'm really surprised they didn't go get Trevor Bauer. But that's on a different note. That's on a totally different note. He was there. I don't know why they haven't grabbed him. They have nothing else. He's the cheapest player in baseball. You can grab him for nothing. But Cincinnati, interesting overall last couple years. I mean, this is the team that's had like a Roldis Chapman to start. This is the team that Joey Votto, future Hall of Famer. Gosh, I'm forgetting every other player that they've ever had, but they've had other players. I don't know
That's
why.
how that's how irrelevant.
Johnny Cueto. They've had
Yeah,
Johnny Cueto.
Cueto.
The Todd father, Todd Frazier. They just had Mike Moustakas, right? Is that
Had.
correct?
Emphasis on the had part.
Had. Yeah. So Cincinnati is kind of like when you think of baseball, you're like, oh yeah. If like somebody said, name all 30 teams, are you a real baseball fan? You could possibly forget the Cincinnati Reds exist. Like you could. Their uniforms are not very. When it was, wasn't it the Cubs and Reds in the Field of Dreams
Yeah,
game?
it was boring as hell. Like I don't know why. I don't
Right.
know why I watched that whole game, but I did.
Major League Baseball, we're trying to get fans into the sport. Don't put two terrible teams together in Field of Dreams. You put two
Unrelated, but
playoff
it
teams.
should be unrelated. But this year's Field of Dreams should be Giants Dodgers, but New York Giants versus Brooklyn Dodgers. Hire me, MLB. I'll fucking fix that game for you.
Like it. So we're going to talk about this. Is the team fixable? No, the owner just doesn't care. He wants to sell, and like he like does the boldest moves. Like he said something was like, "I own the team. Like I'll pay what's worth." And like,
He,
what are the
he,
things
he
that
he might actually fist fight fans in the parking lot.
he says? Like, what are the fans like? The fans don't get to make those calls. This is my money or whatever. Like what? Like you tell me you don't like baseball without telling me you don't like baseball. So we're going to talk about what they lost this offseason and what they're looking for this season. Um, Arguably, like talking about the last team, now talking about like this team, we may have been wrong, like on something. To be real, like with Washington, they could spark something to be better than this team. But going into this season, based on last season and what they did, I think you're correct with your ranking. Again, Scully's power rankings. I may disagree with his power rankings times. I'll bring those up. If I do disagree with this, I don't believe by it's that much of a margin. Okay, so Shelly's going to take us through who they gained and who they lost.
Yeah, I mean it's really concerning when your highest profile free agent is Will Myers, who has been passed around some of the league's deepest farm systems like a bong in a freshman dorm room. And he's now found a new home in Cincinnati, where I'm sure he will spend a fruitful 5 months before being traded at the deadline. Um, so yeah, this is probably like the saddest. I would argue this is the saddest additions and losses column I think I made, because there's just really nothing to note except for you get good catcher depth. Kevin Newman was serviceable with the Pirates. Luke Weaver is now out of Arizona because I guess his contract ended. Um, and they lost Moustakis because he just couldn't he just has been the same guy as he was in the last few years. But the only thing that gives me hope for this franchise is their surprisingly deep prospect pool. They made the last few trades they've made have been very nice for them, especially the Luis Castillo trade. And you'll hear me say this a lot when
They've pleased, yeah.
when contending teams prospect hug, it's the most frustrating thing in the game for me personally. When teams like the Mariners give their number 1, number 3, and number 5 overall prospects to lock down a guy like Luis Castillo for like the next 6 years, it it warms my heart because if there's actually some aggression in these front offices to either get on with the rebuild or to start putting together a contending roster. And in the case of the Reds, they now have a pretty sizable prospect pool from both the domestic and international standpoints. Um, so it could be a situation like Washington where a lot of these guys start getting called up this year. Guys like Noelvi Marte, who came over in the deal with the Mariners. Ellie De La Cruz, I think is their number 1 prospect in the system. He may make his debut this season as well. So these are all guys who are going to make some noise in Cincinnati this season. The problem is that this team is just it's poorly managed. David Bell, I like his attitude sometimes, but I mean, when you attach yourself to a guy like Amir Garrett on more than one case, it's not a good look. So I think this team could really benefit from new ownership, new management, and again, just invest in youth. Just please, God.
Yeah, and it's basically the cycle that always goes with these small market teams is they get through a part. This is why a number one, I kind of hate the rule in baseball that you have to have 6 years of service time before you're eligible for free agent because one, they bend the rules and they keep you down for a while so you don't actually qualify for another season. So it's practically 7 years that these players are held hostage on these terrible teams. But if they get lightning in a bottle and they strike together, like a Royals or like they always pop up every once in a while. The Royals is the last one I can really remember. And then they strike and they're able to get a win out of there. I think the pool is if the pool pays off, if what they got in the return actually lives up to the hype and they come up to the thing, then they're smarter than all of us. They knew what they were doing. They played, but in 6 years, they're going to be the farm system for whoever wants to buy them. Like at the end of the day, like they're not going to resign any of these players. The day of like homegrown like players, all they played for one team, is going to be like the rarest thing in baseball. At the end of the day, um,
I mean, this is the same franchise that had Ken Griffey Jr. for almost 10 years and had nothing to show for it.
yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I just don't think you're going to get to a level that matters. And again, the Central has always been competitive, and the reason why two teams have been the top of the heat for so long is one, the team in Missouri will spend money. They might not spend it all the time, but they'll at least keep it going, and they have expected to win. And the Cubs are going to keep contending. The team that we'll talk about next, which some might be surprising that is not the one we're talking about first, um, they'll never spend. They're just the farm system for the New York Yankees, and then the Brewers are always in the influx, so they get that benefit. Um, On the sports book this coming up, this team's projected 65 wins, 65 and a half over under. Um, I'm leaning under.
Hmm.
I'm leaning under with the division, the spread out. They're going to have to play teams from the East a little bit more than they would have. They're going to have to play teams from the West. I'm pretty sure they have to play like everybody in the National League at least once, something. So I think the Dodgers, the Padres, those are losses that they probably wouldn't have faced otherwise because they're going to play the Pirates 5 less games. They're going to play the Brewers 5 less games, which is helpful or hurtful. But when you play your division rival for so much, you have a chance to like overtake them in
And
games because
even
you play them.
even with playing the Pirates, they were like 7-12, I think, last year against the Pirates. Like, and that's why they finished lower than the Pirates did. When both teams had the exact same record, both teams finished with 100 losses. But the Reds lost the head to head by a margin of like 5 or 6 games. So it's gonna be a couple ugly seasons in Cincinnati, not like what we talked about with the Nationals, where it's a good group of exciting players. In Cincinnati, you're gonna have to wait for that group to come for a bit.
I've done this the past few episodes. I'm going to change it up. It's to make the playoffs. This team to make the playoffs extended plus 1600. I still think you stay far away from this team. I think it's funny. Like, I bet there's some people like, oh, I could win some money on it. You're not going to win money with the Cincinnati Reds. I think, like, arguably what we talked about, I think the Nationals could finish higher than this team overall. I think 65 wins, I think it's almost 5 more wins than the Nationals. I don't see that happening overall. I think they are under. I think this is a team that's going to be rebuilding. They're a constant rebuild, but they're in a heavy one right now. So
You could go as far to say as the San Francisco Giants broke this franchise on more than one occasion.
yeah, that's all right. Um, yeah. So MVP, I'm gonna go with the future Hall of Famer. I'm going Votto. He may not. The reason why I'm picking Votto this season, especially because one, I think he still has it. Two, the shift is gone, and I think the shift is going to help him get that average back to a normal level because they can't play everybody on where he pulls. So the chances are, and him spreading the field and against a division that's kind of influx defensively overall, like shortstop, third base. I mean, yeah, you get Cardinals and stuff, but there's still some proven stuff out there. I think you could see a different number coming from Votto. I think it could be a crooked number. I think there's a lot of things changing. Also, with the rule changes in the pitch clock and not having to wait between pitches for so long to get maximum effort on those balls, some pitchers are going to be rushing, and the person I wouldn't want to rush against is Votto. Like, I think Votto can bad pitches, he can kill. So that's my MVP for this team. Again, be happy you're going to see him one more time. I wouldn't be surprised if he's on a contender for the last run. Wouldn't be surprised if they move him. To get something at the deadline. But this is your last chance to see one of the greats. Those first basemen of the Central, are things of the past. Fielder, Pujols, Votto. They were all there for one point. They all separated a difference, but
Mhm.
Votto is the one that stayed true to the Reds his whole career. Which hats
Why?
off
We
to
have
him.
no idea.
Loyal Canadian. That's what I'll say. A loyal Canadian. Also, really funny guy. Really funny. He's
Hmm.
honestly one of the funniest personalities in baseball. They should have tied a rocket ship to him sooner. Who's your MVP?
The former rookie of the year, Jonathan India. I think that he is I think he is their biggest bright spot right now in terms of their future. He's going to end up being. I mean, he's currently their leadoff guy. He's the guy who gets the pace going in every one of their games. And he's done a great job so far. He had a little bit of a down year last year, but again, sophomore slumps can happen to anybody. But going into what now is his third year in the majors, I think he's going to take more of a leadership role in that clubhouse, and he's going to be the most valuable guy on that roster.
It was close between the two. Honestly, I don't think Jonathan India is a bad pick. Player to watch, I'm going to take Nick Lodio. I don't know
Lomolo,
how to. Well, yeah,
Lodolo.
however you pronounce it. I think overall as a pitcher, I think it's a player to watch. I mean, he finished with a 3.66 earned run, 4-7, had almost over 130 strikeouts. So, of a player to watch for another season, for a full season, I like it. He pitched in a total of 19 games last season, so he's already had like a full season. I think another season up. He would at least be fun to watch. So, who's your player to watch?
I'm going with a different pitcher. This is a guy who, former number 2 overall pick, throws upwards of like 103 on his best day. Hunter Green.
Okay.
This is a guy who I feel like they've been waiting for him to be this superstar player for so long, going on almost 7 years now since he was drafted. And I think this is going to be the year where they're like, okay, you need to show us everything you have right here this season, or we're gonna cut ties. Like, it's one thing if you're, a highly rated prospect and you need a little bit extra time to work on your game. It's another when you make your entire repertoire off of, you can blaze a guy's head off with your fastball, and that is what gets you to where you are. And you just have issues with whether it be staying healthy, command, being able to control the pitch. I mean, he was like the wild thing out there before he got fixed. So he's going to be one of the players I'm watching this season to see, is he going to take that next step, or is he just going to plateau and become one of the bigger in recent history what ifs in terms of pitching prospects?
Like I said, we're tying sports betting into our over the wall pod this year. Um, uh, to make the playoffs, they're actually less. Uh, there's higher odds on the Reds to uh, the Reds to make the postseason than a team we'll talk about later, which I think is interesting. Um, but with the Reds, their win total sits at, it was right here, 65 and a half.
I take the under on that one.
I would take the under as well. And to make the playoffs, they're actually 1,600. I think we talked about that already.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd still take the under on that team. But we're tying in sports, but you'll also find out where we'll have some of these as our bets going into the season to see where we line up, which one we actually took going into the season. Cincinnati Reds, are they fixable?
Sell the team.
Sell the team. I think you're fixable if you sell the team and you can sign some of these talents and you actually make a move. Because I think this team, what if lightning strikes and they have like a great like core rookie group that comes through the runs and they run. At the end of the day, they probably still sell some pieces off to get some more. And it's just that's the frustrating. It happened with Baltimore last year. Everybody's
Yeah.
like, can they make the playoffs? And they're like, not our year. What? Give them a shot. I would be so discouraged if I was in that clubhouse. So, are they fixable? I'd say sell the team. But check out us, like, comment, subscribe. Over the Wall Pod on Twitter. We'll be live talking games all week. We'll also be tweeting out our picks. Even if we don't have a show, we'll be tweeting out what we're taking that day or what we like or what we think you should go. We'll have an overall ranking of every episode of like how we sit, how many bets we're down, how many bets we're up. Again, if you have a problem with gambling, do not take our advice. We are not experts by any means. We just like to have fun and watch games. So, do all those things. We'll catch you on the next one. I think the next one we're going to is Black and Gold. So we're staying in the same
Race
division.
the Jolly Roger.
So we'll see you on the next one.